Noah Grant had not spoken a word in 3 years. Not since the rainy night when the car his mother was driving slid off the road. Noah was in the back seat. He survived with only a few cuts and bruises, but his mother did not make it. The doctors said there was nothing physically wrong with Noah's voice. The problem was in his mind. The shock of the accident had locked his words away somewhere deep inside him. Noah lived with his grandmother Betty in a small white house at the end of Maple Street in Oak Ridge. It was a quiet town where everyone knew everyone. People always smiled at Noah when they saw him at the grocery store or the park. They would bend down and talk to him in loud, slow voices as if he couldn't hear. Noah could hear just fine. He just couldn't make himself speak. Betty was kind and patient with Noah. She never pushed him to talk. Instead, she gave him a notebook to write in when he needed something. Noah became good at writing. His teachers said he was one of the best writers in his class. But at home, he mostly used hand signals that he and Betty had worked out together. A touch to his stomach meant he was hungry. Rubbing his eyes meant he was tired. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. Life was okay, but Noah was lonely. The other kids at school didn't know how to play with a boy who couldn't talk back. They weren't mean to him, but they didn't include him either. Noah spent most recesses sitting alone, watching the others play from a distance. Everything changed on Noah's 10th birthday. Betty took him to the animal shelter. "You're growing up," she said. "I think you're ready for some responsibility, and maybe a friend." The shelter was loud with barking dogs and meowing cats. Noah covered his ears as they walked past the cages, but then in the last cage he saw a dog sitting quietly. The dog wasn't barking or jumping like the others. It just watched Noah with intelligent brown eyes. "That's Max," the shelter worker told them. "He's a German Shepherd about 3 years old. Someone found him wandering near the highway 6 months ago. No one ever claimed him." Noah pointed at Max, then looked at his grandmother with pleading eyes. "Are you sure?" Betty asked. "He's a big dog. He'll need lots of exercise." Noah nodded firmly. He reached his hand toward the cage, and Max came forward to sniff it. Then the dog licked his fingers gently. Noah smiled. A rare sight these days. The paperwork took an hour, and then Max was theirs. On the drive home, the dog sat in the back seat next to Noah, watching the world go by through the window. Noah put his hand on Max's fur, feeling the warmth and steadiness of the animal beside him. That night, Max slept on the floor next to Noah's bed. When Noah woke up crying from a nightmare about the accident, Max was there, nuzzling his hand until he calmed down. Betty found them both asleep on Noah's bed in the morning, the boy's arm thrown over the dog's neck. Days passed, and Noah and Max became inseparable. The dog followed Noah everywhere, to the kitchen for breakfast, to the bus stop for school, and to the front door when he returned. Max seemed to understand that Noah was different. He didn't need Noah to call his name or give verbal commands. He watched Noah's hands and body language with careful attention. One day, Noah was in the backyard with Max when he dropped his ball under the porch. He pointed at the space, trying to show Max where the ball had gone. Max looked at where Noah was pointing and then crawled under the porch to get the ball. When he brought it back, Noah was amazed. He hadn't expected Max to understand such a specific gesture. That gave Noah an idea. That evening, he sat with Max in his bedroom and made a hand signal, touching his ear, then pointing to the door. He repeated this several times, then walked to the door and opened it. He brought Max back to the starting position and made the signal again. After a few tries, Max walked to the door when Noah made the signal. Noah was excited. He tried another signal, touching his chin, then pointing to his bed. After some practice, Max would go to the bed when Noah made this signal. Day after day, Noah taught Max new signals. Touch nose, then point up. Max would sit. Touch forehead, then sweep hand across. Max would lie down. Betty noticed the change in Noah. He seemed happier, more engaged. She watched from the doorway one afternoon as Noah and Max practiced their secret language. Noah made a complex series of hand movements, and Max performed a series of actions, sitting, then lying down, then rolling over. When Max finished, Noah's face lit up with joy. He threw his arms around the dog's neck and hugged him tight. "Noah," Betty said, coming into the room, "what you're doing with Max is amazing. It's like you two have your own private language." Noah nodded, his eyes bright with pride. "Have you shown anyone else?" Betty asked. Noah shook his head firmly. He made a zipping motion across his lips, then pointed to Max and himself. "It's a secret between you two," Betty said, understanding. "That's okay, everyone needs some secrets." The special bond between Noah and Max didn't go unnoticed at school. Noah started bringing Max to the bus stop, and the other kids were drawn to the well-behaved dog. They asked Noah questions about Max, which he would answer by writing in his notebook. For the first time, Noah had something the other kids were interested in. A few of them even started sitting with him at lunch to look at pictures of Max on his grandmother's old digital camera. Ms. Kelly, Noah's teacher, noticed the change too. She asked Betty if Max could visit the class sometime. "I think it would be good for Noah," she said, "and educational for the other children to learn about how animals can help people." So one Tuesday, Betty brought Max to school. Noah stood proudly at the front of the class while Ms. Kelly explained that Max was a special kind of companion for Noah. The other students asked questions, which Noah answered by writing on the board. When Billy asked if Max knew any tricks, Noah made one of his secret signals. Max responded immediately, walking in a perfect circle, then sitting down. The class erupted in applause. Life fell into a comfortable pattern. Noah, Betty, and Max became a family. Every morning, Noah would wake up and make his first signal of the day, touching his heart, then reaching toward Max. It meant good morning in their private language. Every night, the last signal was similar, touching his heart, then making a small wave. Good night. But the peaceful life Noah had built was about to be tested. 6 months after Max came to live with them, Betty got sick. At first, it seemed like just a bad cold, but then she couldn't get out of bed. Noah found her one morning, pale and confused. He ran to the neighbor's house, something he never did, and pounded on the door until Mrs. Lewis answered. One look at Noah's terrified face, and she knew something was wrong. Betty went to the hospital in an ambulance. The doctors said she had pneumonia and needed to stay for treatment. Mrs. Lewis, who had been Betty's friend for 30 years, took Noah and Max home with her. "Your grandma will be okay," Mrs. Lewis told Noah that night as she tucked him into the bed in her spare room. "She just needs medicine and rest." Noah nodded, but his eyes were filled with worry. Max jumped up on the bed beside him, breaking Mrs. Lewis's no dogs on furniture rule, but she didn't have the heart to scold him. Not when the dog was so clearly providing comfort to the silent, frightened boy. What no one knew, not Mrs. Lewis, not the doctors, not even Betty, was that Noah's troubles were just beginning. The next day, a man in a dark blue car pulled up in front of Betty's house. He sat there for a long time, just looking at the house. Then he made a phone call. The man was Greg Grant, Noah's father. He hadn't seen his son in 3 years, not since before the accident. But now he was back in Oak Ridge. And he had plans for Noah, plans that didn't include Betty, Mrs. Lewis, or Max. The knock on Mrs. Lewis's door came early Saturday morning. Noah was still in his pajamas, eating cereal with Max sitting patiently beside him, hoping for a dropped piece. Mrs. Lewis opened the door to find a tall man in a neat suit standing on her porch. "I'm looking for Noah Grant," the man said. "I'm Greg Grant, his father." Mrs. Lewis frowned. She knew about Greg from what Betty had told her over the years. He had left Noah and his mother when Noah was only 4. After the accident, he hadn't even come to the funeral. "Noah is having breakfast," she said, not inviting him in. "I need to see my son," Greg insisted. "I have legal rights." From the kitchen, Noah heard the man's voice. He didn't recognize it at first, but something about it made his stomach feel tight and cold. Max noticed the change in Noah. The dog's ears perked up and he moved closer to the boy. Mrs. Lewis reluctantly stepped aside. "5 minutes," she said, "and I'll be right here." Greg walked into the kitchen and stopped when he saw Noah. "You've grown," he said awkwardly. "Do you remember me? I'm your dad." Noah stared at the man. He did remember him, but only in bits and pieces. Loud voices late at night, a slammed door, his mother crying. Noah looked down at his cereal bowl and didn't respond. "I heard about your grandmother being in the hospital," Greg said, sitting down across from Noah. "That's why I'm here. I want to help." Max moved between Noah and Greg, not growling but watchful. Greg frowned at the dog. "Is this yours? He's pretty big for a house pet." Noah put his hand on Max's back, a signal for the dog to stay calm. He nodded in answer to Greg's question. "Look, Noah, I know I haven't been around," Greg continued, "but I've changed. I have a good job now in the city, a nice apartment. There's a school there with special teachers who could help you with your problem." Noah didn't like the way Greg said problem, as if not talking was a disease that needed to be cured. He didn't respond, just kept his hand on Max. "I've talked to a lawyer," Greg said. "Since your grandmother is sick and there's no other family, I'm going to apply for custody. You'll come live with me." Noah's eyes widened in fear. "Leave Oak Ridge? Leave his school, his house, Max?" He shook his head firmly. "It's not up to you, son," Greg said, his voice getting a little harder. "You're a minor, and I'm your father. The law is on my side." Mrs. Lewis stepped in then. "I think that's enough for today, Mr. Grant. Noah has had a lot to deal with. His grandmother will be out of the hospital soon, and any decisions can wait until then." Greg stood up. "Fine, but I'll be back, and you can tell Betty I'm serious about this." He looked at Noah one more time. "Think about what I said. A fresh start could be good for you." After Greg left, Noah ran to his room in Mrs. Lewis's house. Max followed him. Noah curled up on the bed, his whole body shaking. Max jumped up beside him, pressing his warm weight against Noah's side. Noah buried his face in the dog's fur and cried silently. Mrs. Lewis called the hospital to tell Betty what had happened. "He just showed up," she said, "talking about custody and taking Noah to the city." Betty was upset but not surprised. "He probably heard I'm sick and sees a chance to take control," she said. "Call Joe Peterson. He's a lawyer and an old friend. Tell him what's happening." The next few days were busy and confusing for Noah. Mr. Peterson came to talk to Mrs. Lewis, bringing papers for her to sign. Noah overheard words like temporary guardianship and emergency hearing. He understood enough to know that his father was trying to take him away, and the grown-ups were trying to stop it. Betty was getting better, but the doctor said she would need to stay in the hospital for at least another week. Noah visited her every day after school. He would sit beside her bed and write notes about his day, careful not to mention Greg or the custody issue. But Betty knew her grandson well enough to see the worry in his eyes. "Noah," she said one afternoon, holding his hand, "I need you to be brave. There's going to be a court hearing next week. The judge will decide who takes care of you while I'm sick." Noah wrote on his notepad, "Will I have to go with him?" Betty sighed. "I hope not. Mrs. Lewis has applied to be your guardian until I'm better. But your father has rights too, just because he's your father. The judge will decide what's best for you." Noah wrote another question. "Can Max come to court?" Betty smiled. "I don't know if dogs are allowed in courtrooms, but we can ask." The day of the hearing arrived. Noah wore his best clothes, khaki, pants, and a blue button-up shirt that Betty had bought him for school picture day. Mrs. Lewis had called the court ahead of time and gotten special permission for Max to attend as a comfort animal for Noah. The courthouse was a big brick building in the center of town. Noah had never been inside before. The ceilings were high and people's footsteps echoed on the marble floors. Noah held tight to Max's leash with one hand and Mrs. Lewis's hand with the other. Greg was already there with his lawyer, a man named Mr. Perry, who wore an expensive suit and carried a shiny leather briefcase. They sat on one side of the courtroom. Noah, Mrs. Lewis, and Mr. Peterson sat on the other side. Max lay quietly under Noah's chair. Judge Martinez entered the room, and everyone stood up. She was a small woman with gray hair and glasses, but she had a powerful presence. She looked at Noah and smiled briefly before taking her seat behind the big wooden desk at the front of the room. "This is a hearing to determine temporary custody of minor child Noah Grant," she announced. "I understand the child's grandmother, legal guardian Betty Grant, is currently hospitalized and unable to care for him at this time." Mr. Perry spoke first. "Your Honor, my client Greg Grant is Noah's biological father. He has stable employment as a sales manager for coal industries. He has a suitable 2-bedroom apartment in the city and is prepared to enroll Noah in Westside Academy, which has an excellent program for children with special needs." Noah didn't like being called a child with special needs. He wasn't stupid or sick, he just didn't talk. Mr. Peterson spoke next. "Your Honor, Diane Lewis has been a close family friend to the Grants for over 30 years. She lives next door to the home Noah shares with his grandmother. Noah is familiar with her and comfortable in her care. Most importantly, Mrs. Lewis is willing to maintain Noah's current routine, same school, same friends, same environment, during what is already a stressful time for the boy." Judge Martinez nodded. "I see the child has a dog with him. Can someone explain the animal's presence in my courtroom?" "That's Max, Your Honor," Mr. Peterson said. "He's Noah's companion animal. Noah has been selectively mute since the trauma of losing his mother 3 years ago. Max helps him feel secure and calm." Mr. Perry stood up again. "Your Honor, if I may, this dog is precisely part of the problem. The child has become dependent on the animal rather than developing proper communication skills. My client believes that Noah needs professional therapy, not a pet that enables his condition." Noah felt anger rise in his chest. Max wasn't just a pet. Max was his friend, his voice when he couldn't find his own. He squeezed the dog's leash tightly, and Max pressed closer to his legs, sensing his distress. Judge Martinez looked at Noah. "Young man, I understand you don't speak, but can you write?" When Noah nodded, she continued, "Would you be willing to answer some questions for me by writing your answers?" Noah nodded again. The bailiff brought him a notepad and pen. "Noah, do you understand why we're all here today?" the judge asked gently. Noah wrote, "To decide where I live while Grandma is sick." "That's right," Judge Martinez said. "How do you feel about staying with Mrs. Lewis?" Noah wrote, "Good. She lets Max stay too. Her house is next to mine. And how do you feel about possibly going to live with your father?" Noah's hand trembled over the paper. He wrote slowly, "Scared." "Can you tell me why you're scared?" the judge pressed. Noah stared at the blank paper. How could he explain the cold feeling he got when his father was around? The memories that were more like feelings than clear pictures? He didn't have the words even in writing. He looked up at the judge and shook his head. "Thank you, Noah," Judge Martinez said. "I know this is difficult." The hearing continued with more legal talk that Noah didn't fully understand. His father took the stand and talked about how he had changed, how he had a good job now and could provide for Noah. Mrs. Lewis talked about her friendship with Betty and her love for Noah. A school counselor talked about Noah's progress at school. Through it all, Max stayed by Noah's side, a warm, steady presence in the confusing, scary room. Noah kept one hand on Max at all times, drawing comfort from the dog's loyalty. What Noah didn't know was that Max would soon do much more than provide comfort. The dog was about to change everything. The court took a short break after lunch. Noah sat on a bench in the hallway with Mrs. Lewis and Max. He was tired and worried. The morning had been long, with many adults talking about him as if he wasn't there. Noah petted Max's soft fur, finding comfort in the familiar feel of it under his fingers. "You're doing great," Mrs. Lewis told him. "Just a little longer, and then we can go home." Noah nodded, but he wasn't sure if that was true. What if the judge decided he should go with his father? Would he have to leave today? Would he be allowed to take Max? Greg and his lawyer stood at the other end of the hallway, talking in low voices. Every now and then, Greg would look over at Noah with an expression Noah couldn't quite read. It wasn't exactly mean, but it wasn't kind either. It was the look of someone sizing up a problem they needed to solve. When the break was over, everyone went back into the courtroom. Judge Martinez called a new person to speak. It was Dr. Harris, a child psychologist who had been asked by the court to talk to Noah earlier that week. In my professional opinion, Dr. Harris said, Noah's selective mutism is a response to trauma. The loss of his mother was deeply painful, and not speaking has become a coping mechanism. And what do you recommend for his treatment? Judge Martinez asked. Consistency and safety are paramount, Dr. Harris replied. Any major disruption to his environment could set back his progress. That said, I also believe Noah would benefit from specialized therapy, which might be more accessible in an urban setting. Noah could tell this wasn't clearly for or against him going with his father. He squeezed Max's leash a little tighter. Next, Mr. Perry called Greg back to the stand. Mr. Grant, can you tell the court about the arrangements you've made for Noah's care if you are granted custody? Greg straightened his tie. Yes, I've enrolled Noah in Westside Academy. They have therapists on staff who specialize in childhood trauma and selective mutism. My work hours are flexible, so I can be home when Noah returns from school. My apartment has a bedroom just for him, and there's a park nearby where he can play. And what about the dog? Mr. Perry asked, looking at Max with slight distaste. Greg hesitated. My building has a no pets policy, but I've looked into therapeutic programs that use trained service animals. Noah could visit with dogs in a controlled setting. Noah felt his heart drop. No Max? He couldn't imagine life without his dog. Max was more than a pet. He was Noah's voice, his courage, his best friend. Mr. Peterson, Mrs. Lewis's lawyer, stood up to ask Greg questions. Mr. Grant, before these proceedings, when was the last time you saw your son? Greg shifted in his seat. About 3 years ago. Before the accident that took his mother's life? Yes. And in those 3 years, did you call Noah? Send him birthday cards? Child support payments? Greg's face flushed. I wasn't in a good place. I had issues I needed to work through. But I'm here, now, and I want to make things right. So to be clear, Mr. Peterson pressed, you had no contact with your son during the most traumatic period of his life, and now you want the court to remove him from the only stable home he's known since then? Objection, Mr. Perry called out. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Martinez said. Mr. Peterson, please stick to questions, not commentary. Mr. Peterson nodded. Mr. Grant, can you tell the court why you left Noah and his mother? Greg looked uncomfortable. We had problems. Arguments. It wasn't working. What kind of arguments? The usual kind. Money. How to raise Noah. Nothing unusual. Noah watched. His father's face. Something about the way Greg avoided looking directly at anyone made Noah think he wasn't telling the whole truth. Max sensed Noah's unease and pressed closer to his legs. After Greg, Mrs. Lewis took the stand again. She talked about Noah's daily routine, how well he was doing in school despite not speaking, and the special bond he had with Max. That dog has been more helpful to Noah than any of us, she said, smiling at Noah. They have their own way of communicating. It's quite remarkable to watch. Judge Martinez seemed interested in this. Can you explain what you mean? Noah uses hand signals to tell Max what to do, Mrs. Lewis explained. Not just simple commands like sit or stay, complex things, and Max understands. It's like they have their own language. Your Honor, Mr. Perry interrupted. While this is charming, it's hardly relevant to the matter of custody. I'll decide what's relevant in my courtroom, Mr. Perry, Judge Martinez said firmly. She turned back to Mrs. Lewis. Please continue. As Mrs. Lewis described the special relationship between Noah and Max, Noah felt a strange feeling in his stomach. Not fear this time, but something else. An idea was forming in his mind. He looked at Max, then at his father, then back at Max, again. What if Max could tell what Noah couldn't say? What if their secret language could reveal the truth? When Mrs. Lewis finished speaking, Judge Martinez looked at her notes. I think I've heard enough testimony for today. Before I make my decision, I'd like to speak with Noah privately in my chambers. Mr. Perry stood up. Your Honor, my client objects to any private conversation with the minor without counsel present. Noted, Judge Martinez said. But as this is a family court matter concerning a child's welfare, I have discretion to speak with the child. Mr. Peterson and Mr. Perry may both be present, but not the parents or guardians. Noah felt panic rising in his chest. He didn't want to go into another room without Max. He tugged on Mrs. Lewis's sleeve and pointed at Max, then at himself. Mrs. Lewis understood. Your Honor, Noah is asking if Max can come with him. Judge Martinez considered this. Yes, the dog may accompany Noah. They went into the judge's private office. It was smaller than the courtroom, but still formal, with law books lining the walls and certificates in frames. Judge Martinez sat in a leather chair and invited Noah to sit across from her desk. The two lawyers sat in chairs against the wall. Max lay at Noah's feet. Noah, Judge Martinez said gently, I know this is hard. I need to decide what's best for you, and I want to make sure I understand how you feel. She pushed a notepad toward him. Can you write down why you're scared to live with your father? Noah picked up the pen. He wanted to explain, but he didn't know how to put his feelings into words. He had only bits and pieces of memories from when he was little. His father yelling. Things breaking, his mother crying, hiding in his closet with his hands over his ears, he wrote slowly. He gets angry. Can you tell me more about that? Judge Martinez asked. Noah tried, but the memories were fuzzy and mixed up with nightmares. He couldn't be sure what was real and what his mind had created. He wrote, I don't remember everything. I was little. Judge Martinez nodded. That's okay. Is there anything else you want to tell me? Noah looked at Max, then at the notepad. He wrote, I need Max. I can see that, the judge said. You and Max seem to have a special connection. Noah nodded eagerly. Then he had another idea. He wrote, Can I show you something? Of course, Judge Martinez said. Noah put down the pen. He looked at Max and made a series of hand signals, touching his ear, then his chin, then making 2 quick taps on his palm. The lawyers watched with curiosity. Judge Martinez leaned forward, interested. Max immediately stood up. The dog walked around the room once, then came back to Noah and put his paw on Noah's knee, looking directly at the boy's face as if asking a question. Noah made another signal, touching his nose, then pointing to Judge Martinez's desk. Max walked to the desk, sniffed around it, then picked up a small stress ball that was sitting near the edge. He brought it back to Noah and dropped it in his lap. That's impressive, Judge Martinez said. You've trained him very well. Noah shook his head. He wrote, We made this language together. Max is smart. Judge Martinez smiled. I can see that. Is there anything else you'd like to show me? Noah hesitated, then he made a decision. He wrote on the notepad, There's something in my backpack. My journal. Can I get it? Mr. Peterson, would you mind retrieving Noah's backpack? Judge Martinez asked. When the backpack was brought in, Noah took out a worn notebook. He held it for a moment, then slowly handed it to the judge. This was his private journal, where he wrote things he couldn't say and drew pictures of things he remembered. He had never shown it to anyone, not even Betty or Mrs. Lewis. Judge Martinez took the journal carefully. Are you sure you want me to read this? Noah nodded. It was time for the truth to come out, even if he couldn't speak it himself. We'll take a short recess while I review this, Judge Martinez said. Noah, you and Max can wait outside with Mrs. Lewis. As Noah left the judge's chambers, he felt both scared and relieved. The journal contained his deepest secrets, his worst memories. But keeping those secrets had been heavy, like carrying around a backpack full of rocks. Now someone else would help carry that weight. What he didn't know was that when Judge Martinez opened that journal, everything would change. The secret signal Noah had given Max was just the beginning. The real shock was yet to come. Noah sat on the wooden bench outside the judge's chambers, his legs swinging nervously above the floor. Max lay at his feet, head on paws but eyes alert, watching Noah carefully. Mrs. Lewis sat beside them, her hand occasionally patting Noah's, shoulder in a gesture meant to comfort. You did well in there, she told him. Very brave to show your journal. Noah nodded, but his stomach felt tight. Inside that journal were drawings and words he had never shared with anyone, pages filled with memories that came to him in fragments and nightmares. Things he couldn't say out loud, so he put them on paper instead. Across the hallway, Greg paced back and forth, checking his watch every few minutes. His lawyer, Mr. Perry, stood against the wall, typing on his phone. Greg kept glancing at Noah, his expression a mix of impatience and worry. What's taking so long? Greg finally asked Mr. Perry. She's just reading a kid's diary. How long can that take? Mr. Perry put his phone away. Judges work at their own pace, Mr. Grant. Try to be patient. Inside her chambers, Judge Martinez was turning the pages of Noah's journal slowly, her face growing more serious with each page. The journal started with simple entries from after Noah came to live with his grandmother. Short sentences about school, about missing his mother, about not being able to find his voice. Then there were the drawings. Dark, troubling pictures drawn by a child's hand but filled with an adult kind of pain. A small stick figure hiding in what looked like a closet. A bigger stick figure with angry red scribbles for a face. A house with jagged lines coming from it like it was shaking or breaking apart. And the words beside the pictures written in a child's uneven handwriting. Dad broke the table. Mom crying again. Hiding place in my closet. Dad yelling so loud it hurts my ears. Don't want to go home. The most recent entries were about Greg coming back. About Noah's fear of being taken away from Betty, from Max, from everything safe and familiar. Judge Martinez closed the journal and sat back in her chair, removing her glasses to rub her eyes. She had seen many family court cases in her 15 years on the bench. She knew that memories, especially a child's memories, could be complicated. But the raw emotion in Noah's drawings and words was unmistakable. She called for the bailiff. Please bring everyone back into the courtroom. When Noah re-entered the courtroom, he immediately noticed the change in Judge Martinez's face. She looked tired and sad, but also determined. She handed Noah's journal to the bailiff, who returned it to Noah. Noah quickly put it back in his backpack, relieved to have it close again. After reviewing the evidence and testimony in this case, Judge Martinez began, I find myself with additional questions. Mr. Grant, would you please take the stand again? Greg looked surprised but stood and walked to the witness stand. After he was sworn in again, Judge Martinez looked at him directly. Mr. Grant, you testified earlier that you left your family because of the usual arguments over money and child rearing. Is that correct? Greg nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Was there ever any violence in your home, Mr. Grant? Greg's face paled slightly. Violence? No, of course not. Did you ever break furniture during arguments with Noah's mother? Greg's eyes darted quickly to Noah, then back to the judge. I might have slammed a door once or twice. Maybe knocked. Something over accidentally, nothing violent. Mr. Grant, I'm going to be direct with you. Noah's journal contains disturbing accounts of anger and frightening behavior on your part. Accounts written by a child who had no reason to lie in a private diary. Greg's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, a child's memories, especially from such a young age, can be influenced by many factors. Stress, grief, even things they see on television. We can't treat a child's drawings as factual evidence. I'm well aware of that, Mr. Perry, Judge Martinez said. However, as this is a family court proceeding and not a criminal trial, I have some latitude in what I consider, and I find the consistency and detail in Noah's accounts to be deeply concerning. She turned back to Greg. Mr. Grant, were you ever physically violent toward Noah or his mother? Greg gripped the edges of the witness stand. No, absolutely not. Judge Martinez looked at Noah. Noah, I know you don't speak, but I wonder if you could help us understand what happened in your home when you were younger. Would you be willing to use Max to show us? Noah looked confused. He wasn't sure what the judge meant. You showed me how Max responds to your signals, Judge Martinez explained. Perhaps you could use those signals to tell us more about what you remember about your father? Noah understood now. He nodded slowly. This was his chance to tell the truth without having to speak or write it down. He stood up, with Max alert beside him. Noah made a series of hand signals to Max, touching his ear, then his chin, followed by 2 finger taps on his palm. The same signal he had shown the judge earlier. Max stood at attention. Everyone in the courtroom watched with curiosity. Noah made another signal, touching his nose, then pointing directly at Greg. What happened? Next shocked everyone in the courtroom. Max walked deliberately away from Noah, moving toward Greg. But instead of approaching in a friendly way, Max's body language changed. His ears went back, and a low growl came from his throat. He stopped a few feet from Greg, his eyes fixed on the man, his posture stiff and alert. Greg leaned back in the witness stand, his face showing clear discomfort. What's going on? Call the dog off. Noah made another signal, touching his forehead, then making a sweeping motion with his hand. Max lay down on the floor, still watching Greg, still growling softly. Your Honor, I must object to this. This circus act, Mr. Perry said, standing up. This proves nothing except that the boy has trained his dog to be aggressive toward his father. Judge Martinez held up her hand. I disagree, Mr. Perry. I've observed Noah and Max together. This dog is not aggressive. He's protective, and his behavior toward Mr. Grant is telling. She looked at Noah. Noah, do you have any other signals you'd like to show us? Noah thought for a moment, then nodded. He made a new series of signals, touching his heart, then making a circular motion in front of him, then pointing to his backpack. Max immediately went to Noah's backpack. He nudged it with his nose, pushing it toward the judge. Judge Martinez understood. You want me to look at your journal again? Noah nodded. He walked to his backpack, took out the journal, and opened it to a specific page. He handed it to the bailiff, who brought it to the judge. Judge Martinez looked at the page. It showed a drawing of a small figure hiding in what looked like a closet. There were angry red lines coming from outside the closet door, and words scribbled beside it. Dad broke Mom's arm. I hid in the closet. He couldn't find me. The courtroom was completely silent. Judge Martinez looked up from the journal, her face grave. Mr. Grant, did you break your wife's arm? Greg's face had gone white. That was an accident. She fell. We were arguing, and she fell down the stairs. I never meant to hurt her. It was the first time Greg had admitted to any violence, and he seemed to realize his mistake immediately. His lawyer put a hand on his arm to stop him from saying more, but it was too late. Judge Martinez had heard enough. She handed the journal back to Noah, who clutched it tightly to his chest. In light of this new information, Judge Martinez said, I'm ordering an immediate investigation into these allegations of domestic violence. Until that investigation is complete, I am granting temporary guardianship of Noah Grant to Diane Lewis. Greg stood up, his face angry now. You can't do that based on a kid's scribbles and a dog's tricks. I have rights. Mr. Grant, control yourself, Judge Martinez warned. Parents' rights are important, but a child's safety is paramount. And right now I have serious concerns about Noah's safety in your care. Greg looked like he wanted to say more, but his lawyer pulled him back, whispering urgently in his ear. Judge Martinez continued, I'm also issuing a temporary restraining order preventing Mr. Grant from approaching Noah, Mrs. Lewis's home, or Betty Grant's home until the investigation is complete and we reconvene. Noah could hardly believe what was happening. The secret he had carried for so long was finally out. The fear that had lived inside him, that had taken his voice away, was now in the open. And Max, his loyal friend, had helped him tell his truth when words failed him. Mrs. Lewis put her arm around Noah's shoulders. It's over, she whispered. You're safe now. But Noah knew it wasn't quite over. There was one more thing he needed to do, one more truth to reveal, and once again, he would need Max's help to do it. The courtroom was clearing out after Judge Martinez ended the hearing. Greg had stormed out with his lawyer, his face dark with anger. Noah sat with Mrs. Lewis, waiting for the paperwork that would make her his temporary guardian. Max stayed, close to Noah, his warm body pressed against the boy's legs as if to remind him that he wasn't alone. Mr. Peterson, Mrs. Lewis's lawyer, came over with some forms. The judge wants to see Noah one more time before you leave, he told Mrs. Lewis. Just for a minute, she said he can bring Max. Noah looked up, surprised. He wondered what the judge wanted. Had he done something wrong? Mrs. Lewis squeezed his shoulder gently. It's okay. I'm sure she just wants to say goodbye. They followed Mr. Peterson to Judge Martinez's chambers. The judge was sitting behind her desk, her glasses perched on the end of her nose as she reviewed some documents. When they entered, she looked up and smiled. Thank you for coming back, Noah, she said. I wanted to talk to you privately for a moment. She looked at Mrs. Lewis and Mr. Peterson. Would you mind waiting outside? This won't take long. When they were alone except for Max, Judge Martinez came around her desk and sat in the chair next to Noah. What you did today was very brave, she said. It's not easy to tell the truth, especially about scary things from the past. Noah nodded, looking down at his hands. I want you to know that you're safe now. The judge continued. Your father won't be allowed near you while we investigate what happened, and when your grandmother gets better, you'll go back home with her. Noah looked up at her, relief clear in his eyes. He reached for the notepad on her desk and wrote, And Max too? Judge Martinez smiled. Yes, Max too. I can see how special he is to you. She paused, then added, Noah, there's something else I noticed. When you were using your hand signals with Max in the courtroom, you seemed like you wanted to show us more. Is there something else you want to tell me? Noah's eyes widened. The judge was right. There was one more thing, something he had been holding inside for so long that it felt like a stone in his chest. But could he really share it? Even in his journal, he had only hinted at it. He took a deep breath and wrote on the notepad. I saw it happen. Saw what happened? Judge Martinez asked gently. Noah's hand trembled as he wrote, When Dad hurt Mom, I wasn't just hiding. I saw through the closet door. Judge Martinez's expression grew serious. You witnessed the abuse? Noah nodded. He wrote again. The night Mom's arm broke. And other times too. That must have been very frightening for you, the judge said. Noah nodded again. Then he wrote something that made Judge Martinez's heart ache. It's why I stopped talking. Words wouldn't come after that night. The judge was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Noah, sometimes when we see scary things, our bodies find ways to protect us. Not talking was your mind's way of keeping you safe. But you're safe now, and what happened wasn't your fault. Noah looked at her, his eyes full of a question he couldn't ask. Your mother's death was an accident, Judge Martinez said, understanding his unspoken fear. The police investigated. It was a rainy night and the car skidded off the road. It had nothing to do with your father or what happened before. Noah's shoulders relaxed slightly. He had always worried, in a deep part of his mind, that his father might have had something to do with the accident. Hearing that it truly was just bad luck made one small piece of his pain easier to bear. He wrote again, Will I have to talk about what I saw? In court? I don't know yet, Judge Martinez answered honestly. We'll try to protect you as much as possible, but your testimony could be very important. Would you be willing to write down what you remember for the investigators? Noah thought about it, then nodded slowly. He could write it down. With Max beside him, he could find the courage. Thank you, Noah, Judge Martinez said. You can go with Mrs. Lewis now. Take good care of Max. Noah stood up. Then, surprising both himself and the judge, he stepped forward and gave her a quick hug. Judge Martinez hugged him back, her eyes suspiciously bright when they separated. Off you go, she said with a smile. I'll see you again soon. As Noah walked out with Max, he felt lighter somehow. The secrets he had carried for so long were finally out in the open. He didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in years, he felt hopeful. The next few weeks were busy. Noah met with a kind woman named Ms. Rivera, who was investigating his case. She asked him many questions, which he answered by writing or by drawing pictures. Max was allowed to stay with him during these meetings, and his presence made the difficult conversations easier. Noah also started seeing a new therapist, Dr. Allen, who specialized in helping children who had experienced trauma. Dr. Allen didn't push Noah to speak. Instead, she used art therapy and play therapy, helping Noah express his feelings without words. Max came to these sessions too, becoming an important part of Noah's therapy. Betty was finally released from the hospital. Although she was still weak and needed help around the house, she was overjoyed to have Noah back home. Mrs. Lewis came by every day to check on them and to help with cooking and cleaning until Betty regained her strength. One afternoon, about a month after the court hearing, Noah was sitting on the porch steps with Max, watching the clouds drift across the sky. Betty was napping inside, and the house was quiet and peaceful. Noah felt a strange sensation in his throat, a loosening of something that had been tight for a very long time. He looked at Max, who was watching him with those intelligent eyes that seemed to understand everything. "Max," Noah whispered, his voice rusty from years of silence. The sound was so soft that even Max had to perk up his ears to hear it. Noah's eyes widened in surprise at the sound of his own voice. He swallowed hard, then tried again. "Max," he said a little louder this time. The dog's tail began to wag, thumping against the wooden porch. Noah felt tears spring to his eyes, but they were tears of wonder, not sadness. He reached out and put his arms around Max's neck, burying his face in the dog's fur. "Good boy," he whispered. "Thank you." The final court hearing took place 2 months later. This time, Noah walked into the courtroom with his head held high. Betty was beside him, fully recovered now, and Max walked calmly at his other side. Mrs. Lewis and Mr. Peterson were there too, along with Dr. Allen, who had written a report for the judge. Greg was present with a new lawyer. He looked thinner and tired, his confident manner gone. The investigation had uncovered police reports from years ago, domestic disturbance calls from neighbors who had heard shouting and crashes from the Grant house. Noah's mother had never pressed charges, but the pattern was clear. Judge Martinez welcomed everyone back to her courtroom. "Before we begin," she said, "I want to acknowledge the courage it takes for a family to face difficult truths. This court's primary concern is always the welfare of the child." She reviewed the findings of the investigation, the recommendations from Dr. Allen, and the statements from all parties involved. Then she looked directly at Noah. "Noah, would you like to say anything before I make my final ruling?" Everyone in the courtroom expected Noah to write his response or to use Max to communicate, but Noah surprised them all. He stood up, took a deep breath, and spoke out loud for the first time in court. "I want to stay with my grandma," he said in a voice that was soft but clear. "And Max." A murmur of surprise rippled through the courtroom. Betty gasped and put her hand over her mouth, tears filling her eyes. Even Judge Martinez looked momentarily shocked before she smiled warmly. "Thank you for telling us, Noah," she said, "and I'm very happy to hear your voice today." She then delivered her ruling. Full custody of Noah would remain with his grandmother, Betty Grant. Greg would be allowed supervised visitation only after completing anger management classes and therapy. The visits would begin only when Noah's therapist felt he was ready. As they left the courthouse for the last time, Noah felt the warm spring sun on his face. The world seemed brighter somehow, full of possibilities that hadn't existed before. He wasn't talking much yet, just a few words here and there when it felt right. But the silence that had once been his prison was now a choice, not a necessity. Betty wrapped her arm around Noah's shoulders as they walked to the car. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "Your mother would be proud too." Noah nodded. He knew she was right. He reached down to pet Max, who walked faithfully beside him. "We're going home," he said, the words still feeling new and strange in his mouth. Max looked up at him and wagged his tail as if to say he understood perfectly. And maybe he did. After all, it was Max who had helped Noah find his voice when words seemed impossible. It was Max who had stood beside him in the courtroom and given him the courage to reveal the truth. And it would be Max who would be there as Noah continued to heal, one day and one word at a time. As they drove home, Noah looked out the window at the familiar streets of Oak Ridge. For the first time in 3 years, he felt truly safe. The past would always be part of him, but it no longer defined him. With Betty, with Max, and with his newly rediscovered voice, Noah was ready to step into his future, a future where he would no longer be silent about the things that mattered.